the thing I wanted to bring up is, well, look, we lost Drew for a second. Let Drew come back.
Mm-hmm. And Chris reached out, right? Said he couldn't make it today.
I didn't see that unless it came
He
in
did.
recently.
I was just wondering if he did or not. He might not
Oh.
have, but yeah, I'm
I
just here
haven't
to.
heard anything.
Yeah, he's in Florida right now with partners. So yep.
Probably not then.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Drew.
Yeah,
Just in time. We just made you president, and you've got all the tasks assigned to you. So you got a
We're
short
so
fuse.
happy, Drew.
falling
That'll
forward.
teach you.
I think it's
Don't
called.
leave meetings.
Falling forward. It was all of a sudden I couldn't hear anything and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. So best thing to do
I'll
is
tell you, Zoom comes with gremlins.
Yeah,
yeah.
it does.
Trust.
I actually tested the speaker and microphone before I joined, and all of a sudden it didn't work. So yeah.
Gremlins.
Yeah.
It's technology. It works great when it works, and it
Yeah.
just locks things up whenever it doesn't. So
Yeah.
anyway, I've already started the meeting. This is the Thursday, January 18th, 2024 meeting of the CSC CEC task force. The first thing I want to talk about, and Lynn was apologizing that she has to leave early. Do we want to shift the time back for this meeting?
I mean, I could stay for longer. I just have to be out of my door at 6:30 because I have a 6:45 gig downtown every Thursday night.
Yeah, and you've told
If we
us that.
started at 4:45, maybe, or 4:45, rather,
Well, I was thinking either 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock.
I could do that.
How
An
about you?
afternoon meeting that was over by 6 would be wonderful. If we could meet at 4:30 or 5, something like that, and be done by 6.
Okay.
Yeah, that would work for me as well. So
It would work for me.
How
It
about
would,
you,
but
Drew?
Yeah. So two things. One is I have to leave tonight at 7:15, but
Okay.
4:45 is probably the earliest I can meet.
Okay. So
why don't we make it 5 o'clock?
Why don't we make it 5 o'clock, and we will plan to end it at no later than 6:30. I will try to keep the meetings at about an hour. But if we need to go over, we can go over to 6:30. And Lynn, then at that case, if we need more time and you have to leave, you will have captured or been participated in most of the meeting.
Right. So
Okay.
our next meeting would be February 15th. And so we'll start that at what time? 4:45?
5.
5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I will
Great.
set up the future meetings and
That
change
just
the
gives me
Zoom
a
times
little
and so
more
forth.
breathing space.
Good.
Great. Well,
good.
thanks everybody for being flexible. I hate it when one person can't do it and everyone else has to.
No, that's okay, Lynn. You have valuable input.
I want to be there. Okay.
Oh, all right. I'm going to share my screen. Just a second here. Make sure that you can see what you need to see. Yes. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's giving me problems with.
Taking a time to load up.
Yeah. I don't know what's
Are
going
you
on
sharing just what you sent us as the
No,
agenda?
I've actually got a few things going.
Oh, okay.
But there it goes. It finally behaved. So I do have the agenda up. I'll go through it quickly, then I'll kind of explain what we'll do after that. So the Unified Solar Permit, I think, is it's probably going to be coming to the Board of Trustees in February, or it might even be the first meeting in February. The Planning and Infrastructure for Bicycling and Walking, Cambridge Systematics, who is coordinating the Tompkins County Safety Action Plan, is planning one-on-one meetings. And they want to keep those meetings to just a few individuals. So I'm asking that Carolyn Greenball as deputy mayor, John Courtney, and myself be the participants. But I will try to get input from all of the trustees before that meeting for issues that we want to bring up in that meeting. They will be sending us information about what they would like to hear from us before the meeting is scheduled. And so I will pass that along as soon as I get it, so we can get some good impact. And input into them. And it doesn't mean that that's our only chance. It's just that that's our first shot, and our most important issues as far as intersections, roads, streets, sidewalks, general safety for vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians are in place for the village and included in the overall county list too. The alternate fuels infrastructure, the trustees decided not to participate in the EV charging station initiative that Tompkins County was trying to launch. I haven't
Ronnie?
heard. Yes.
I just was on that meeting. So Wolfgang was against it. Carolyn was kind of on the fence, it sounded like to me. I guess in terms of like, I don't want to revisit it, but I just wanted to understand kind of how we got to know on that.
Yeah, why is that?
I didn't get a really good feel for people being really behind it. And quite frankly, there are still outstanding questions as far as would we even have power at the places where enough power at the places that we would like to have charging stations to be able to have this charging station. And then, for instance, at the village offices, who would really be using it? If DPW guys don't have vehicles right now,
Yeah.
none of our fleet, we don't have any. Drew, you're driving an EV and I'm driving a hybrid, but we're rarely there long enough to really need charge. And so it was kind of ambiguous whether we could really do it. And I didn't want to waste the county's time. This does not mean that we can't do this down the road. Right. I think that there might be other methods and projects to do this, and we will have more information. I just kind of want to keep the seed planted into the trustees and the staff that I want to start looking at EV vehicles for our fleet, which would right now, the soonest possible, would be the hybrid vehicles or hybrid pickups for our DPW guys.
One other just thought on that, I was excited about because our office is kind of far from the mall to walk to, but
yes,
the Dankert Park is actually near a bunch of apartment buildings. And I just thought, I know that a lot of people have electric vehicles, they're parked outside, or they kind of hard to charge. I thought down the road, if we visit, that might be a good site to kind of make it more equitable for folks who it's kind of hard to charge when you're in an apartment building.
Right.
So that might work for that.
Marion Hartill Park is also close to some apartments and townhomes. So
that's right. Yeah.
So those two, and I really would like to have one at the village, but we will not drop this completely. It's just for this cycle with the county. I just finally pulled the chain on it and said, well, we'll just wait for the next iteration.
Yeah, we might learn something by waiting. First of all, we don't know what the demand is yet. Not really.
Yes.
And we don't have that many public places where we can put charging stations. And you're right, it doesn't make any sense to put it at the village office if nobody's driving an EV.
Right.
And people who come to a meeting don't really need to charge most likely.
Usually. No.
But our park makes sense.
Yeah, I think the parks make sense too. Plus the parks could be used for charging of electric mowers. And actually if we could put a charging station in that could charge the removable batteries for some of the electric mowers that use battery packs where you can be charging some and using some, it would help. But
maybe even the machines I don't know what machines they use to clear the pathways in those parks with snow, but those could work too.
That's possible too. Yeah. If we could if there's ever an electric version of right now they use like a small tractor.
They use the Bobcat.
Thank you. Yes, the Bobcat for doing that right now.
I'm sure there are electric Bobcats out there.
Yeah. It's just a matter of how long can they run and how efficient are they. And in the winter, when they're moving snow, the batteries obviously are going to drain quicker. And how fast can you charge another battery pack, or how for a Bobcat, it's probably a battery set incorporated in the vehicle itself. So you couldn't, necessarily charge and be working at the same time.
Yeah, and
So,
it could be really klutzy if you get halfway across the Trip Hammer Bridge
mhm,
and your battery dies.
right.
And you have to go back and charge for 8 hours. Meanwhile,
Yes.
people need that snow removed. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's clearly an issue.
It's not just an issue for us, but
Yeah.
I just felt kind of, this could go either way, and rather than waste the county's time, let's just say no, but we'll pay attention to what they do. And
Good.
so, I mean, that I can still stay in touch with Haley Delisle and say, you know, we didn't participate now, but we might down the road. So I want to know everything you learned from this pass. And so I'll keep in touch with her and forward that on to the trustees, the village staff.
And before we move to climate smart stuff, Chris did have a question, so he's not here today.
Okay.
But he was wondering if the village has a community solar subscription, because I know
Yes, we do.
okay.
Yeah, it's I can't remember what the company's name is. I think they changed names. Our clerk would be able to tell us that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So Chris will reach out about that separately. I'll just
Okay.
text him and let him know.
Okay.
But if you guys do, I think that makes you eligible for the 10K grant.
Okay.
Yeah, so Chris will follow up with you guys on that. He just wanted me to ask to double check right now.
Okay. That's great. Glad to hear that. Yeah, we've had that for 3 years, I think.
Mhm.
So I'm not the pledge. Pledge element 7 we'll come back to. I'm going to go through the CEC stuff quick because we can do that. Let's see. Did I go through? Did I say no? Okay. So we the solar permit is coming pretty quick. Our climate smart certification, we're making progress. I'll give you a little update when we start on the pledge element 7 stuff. Community campaigns, so far we're just waiting for notification for new signups for the clean heating and cooling and energy efficiency action. And we did receive NYSERDA's $5,000 action grant, and Jody is putting that into a special category under our general fund so that we can set it aside and use it for future clean energy projects that we select. So it did arrive within the last couple of weeks.
And just to be clear, Ronnie, that bullet point looked like it was under the solar farm. That's not necessarily where it's going right now.
Oh, no.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
No, that's a mistake on my part. Sorry.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure I understood what.
No, that actually should be under the CEC in general.
No yeah.
Sorry. There was another action grant we had I think we had applied for and received a couple of years ago or a year ago.
Okay.
Okay, so for pledge element 7, we started working on this. The last couple of days, I went in and started submitting documentation for certain pledge or certain action items, and I discovered that the pledge element 7 had changed dramatically. I think they took some of the broader action items and split those into separate action items. And I think maybe they added 1 or 2 new ones, but this is the new list. And on the right side, you'll see the spreadsheet, the Google sheet we use to track. I've updated that list too and shown what actions that I submitted for. And the ones from our prior discussions kind of transpose that information over to what we think are planned. The others we would need to discuss and see if we want to try for those, at some point.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I had a quick comment. So I know this because I've been working pretty extensively for this for one of my deliverables for my contract that I have with DEC. But unfortunately, I don't think the hazard mitigation plan will count for climate vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan. So it is a big part of it, but it's the climate vulnerability assessment and the adaptation plans are actually very comprehensive. And so it'll have to go through more work before it could be submitted for credit.
Okay. Well, it's submitted, and I guess I can rescind the submission, right?
Yeah, you can. So you can keep playing around with the application until the deadline. So that's perfectly fine. That being said, so the climate vulnerability assessment and climate adaptation plan, as well as evaluate policies for climate resilience, is something that happens after you've done a natural resource inventory. So we've already done that. So those are the next steps.
Okay.
That's something that I am currently working on with the town of Dryden as well as the town of Newfield.
Okay.
That's something I'm happy to take on probably start later this year. It's a very long process, so it's not something that's going to be easily done or very quickly done. But that's something that the village can look forward to. So
Okay.
if you guys would like to explore that in the future, I'm happy to be
Yeah.
of free technical support for that because that is part of my deliverables for the new contract that is coming out soon.
Okay.
So yeah.
So Jerry,
The,
oh, sorry,
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Jerry.
Bonnie.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna ask, those top 4 things looked really interesting to me, and actually the one that wasn't highlighted, the evaluate policy for climate resilience, that looked like the most bang for the bucks, looking at the description, in that it was it was less intensive than number 1 to 3 months, and it said to identify local planning gaps, essentially, which sounds like be really useful. But
Mhm.
it was kind of, since you've worked on this and it sounds like you're going to tackle it, are these things sequential? Are they all, it sounds like, I was kind of confused when I read it. Do these things have to happen one at a time? Do they happen all at once? It did seem like it came after the NRI, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so it kind of happens sequentially. Sorry, yeah, more. Yeah, it happens sequentially. So essentially, what's going to happen is for the climate vulnerability assessment, it'll be looking at various climate hazards and kind of will be taking into account how much the village has done so far, as well as what it's looking to do, and how that kind of relates to either climate change mitigation, which is reducing greenhouse gases so that climate change effects don't get worse. Whereas adaptation is something that's more along the lines of, the town has already done this and there's already been damage done because of climate change and the greenhouse gases that we emitted so far. And so what can it do or what has it already done to prevent damages from getting worse during those climate hazards?
Right.
So one's like preventing the effects from worsening and one's, preventing damages from being worse because things have already happened.
Yeah, mitigation or adaptation.
Mhm.
I thought that a lot of that information was embedded within the county's hazard mitigation plan.
So
And-
it is, but the document itself is like I said, a little more comprehensive than that and requires,
Okay,
taking those different pieces of those documents, putting it together.
putting it together in a different way.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's fine. So I changed the progress to on those two. I will go back into the CSC system and remove those submissions but leave the hazard mitigation plan within that because I believe it does meet the goal there.
Yes, it definitely does. And yeah, so I was gonna say, it is a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. So I'm kind of unfortunately preoccupied with the 2 other towns for now, but that's something that I'd be happy to work with Lansing on in the future.
Okay, all right. Should probably then just change those to plans so you're not going to be able to work on them. Okay. Is there anything that we can do to prepare for your work, Jerry?
So yes, I would have to go further into detail about what this work kind of looks like. But what I've done so far, at least with the town of Lansing, or not Lansing, town of Dryden, is I've created a list of critical infrastructure in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that is just essentially any like utilities, food and shelter areas, spaces that you think are essential to the kind of prosperity or the well-being hood of the village.
Okay.
And what happens is I basically just need the name and the addresses of those critical infrastructure pieces. And that's something I can give a description of later on once we're closer to working on this actual plan.
Okay.
But if something like that could be gathered together for me, that'd be great because it'll kind of cut down on the work that I have to do for it before I begin on it.
Okay.
But it's essentially I'll be mapping those critical infrastructure on a map and I'll be cross-referencing it with like a floodplain or a flood map that'll basically tell you, what exists within the floodplains now, what needs to be protected.
Okay.
Right. So Jerry, that's another question. So I'm looking at some of these things like designing flood elevation, flood maps, green infrastructure, culverts and dams, which I think Mike Scott are kind of our, I guess, works on the planning side, but has done a culvert dam project. Ronnie, you might know more about than I do. But it sounds like those things are, I wasn't sure if those were kind of more outputs from the top 3 or 4 things or actually inputs. So not so much, in other words, those things are the design, flood elevation, flood map, etc., are things that we could do now to help you on the top 4, or is it go the other way in terms of process?
Yeah, so they are separate because what the climate vulnerability assessment is, it's just a document that provides guidance on what can be done, and
Right.
it also takes into account what has been done. So if any of these actions are things that the village can take on themselves and they want to do, that's something that you should definitely consider.
And it would help you write the top 4 plans.
Yes, it would kind of weigh into how prepared is the town for whatever climate hazard it's preparing for. So this could be anything from flooding, it could be droughts. I know in 2016 we had a drought, winter storms, that sort of thing.
All right.
Or heat waves as well, as you can see from the cooling centers.
Right. Okay, so okay, there's the first few. The others were basically I don't need this. Let me see here. Here. I can open up 7 and we could look at a heat emergency plan. So this is basically, I guess it's pretty straightforward. We know for heat emergency is if you've got extreme heat, what do we have that would help mitigate people being exposed to it? If they're, do they need do they need locations where they can go for extreme heat, or what can we do to deal with extreme heat in this area? Lynn, would you or Drew be willing to explore that?
Yeah.
Okay, I need one of you, and because I'm going to try to assign research, and this will be done before our next meeting. So, Lynn or Drew, who wants to go first?
I'll try, or if you want, Drew, if you want to do it, go ahead.
I'll do the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, what exactly are we charged to do that particular topic?
I can send you the link to this. I'll send you a link to the descriptions of the actions, the directions,
the expectations. Yeah.
the expectations. It's basically, it's just, it will be this page and that you can print out, or you can send it to a PDF.
Right.
And it would basically tells you what we would need to look at and what we would need to do. And I don't think we really have anything within the village that deals with this. So I would send you that link. Go to that page.
Thanks.
Okay. And the next one is cooling, or no, shade structures. Would you like to take that one on, Drew?
I could, but I wasn't sure. I actually had in my notes that it mentioned urbanized settings primarily.
Right.
I don't know if that was a good fit for us. I was trying to weigh like which ones were the best fits, but is the idea to kind of just go through, assign each of these?
Yeah, if you think that it's not appropriate, that's fine too.
I didn't have it on the top of the list, but I'll take a look at it further. But
okay.
Yeah.
Again, it's really our public areas more than anything, isn't it? I mean, it'd be wonderful if our malls put in shade structures in the parking lots. It would reduce the heat coming off all that asphalt.
Right.
But we can't make them do it. And my dream is that they all have shade structures with solar on them.
Yeah, so I just wasn't sure how we'd be able to implement that when I read each of them. I read through each of them like in, 5-10 minutes or whatever each. And that one seemed to be like, no, I don't think that was the most, and the cooling centers. They kind of particularly, I think that the quota they have focused on urban, low income, elderly, minority populations need cooling centers.
Right.
Yeah,
I thought like the heat emergency plan might encompass some of what would be there, but maybe we could, do both.
Okay, I was gonna say that the cooling centers and the
Yeah.
shade structures might go together, so if
Okay.
maybe you could look at those together.
Sure.
Okay, so let's go. Conserve natural areas. I was going to look at this originally.
It seems like we could build off the NRI on that.
Yes,
potential
unique
trail.
natural areas. Well, that we have to figure out what has
Unique
actually been
natural area.
designated as a conservation area.
Yeah, that one was, I mean, we could build off potential trail easements it mentioned in there, like that could be helpful, kind of the two together, but it says timeframe is 1 to 2 years, and it looked like it was costly, like 30,000 at least, kind of the estimate. So grant money would be helpful. So, yeah, is it? I can't remember, they had like one thing cost 10 to 20,000, the estimate, another thing cost another 10,000, so.
Yeah,
just-
I'll research. I mean, does the fact that we've set those aside
Yeah,
as easements and we maintain them, is that a conservation model? Or does it require something more formal?
right.
So I will do some research on that. Watershed-based flood mitigation plan. I was going to, this actually, I was gonna check with the Cayuga Lake watershed, the two organizations to see if there's something already out there that we are participating in that's been done. And the flood elevation and flood maps with the recent FEMA documentation as far as the flood plan and flood insurance areas, we might be able to get some information from the county or FEMA on that. I've got some of the documentation that was part of the presentation that might help us with that, but I can do that too.
Yeah,
not much of the village. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I think you go first. You're speaking.
Well, I was just gonna say, not much of the village is actually in flood hazard
No,
zone. Maybe along the lake at Bolton Point,
right.
which, it's kind of a natural area, but with the intake plant. And possibly, I've looked at the map and now I've sort of forgotten what else, but very little in the village is actually considered flood hazard
Right.
area, where
And-
everything in the city of Ithaca seems to be flood hazard.
Yeah, I
don't-
think. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Drew. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think from reading that, well, I liked it because there's a lot of different options, like all the way up to 14 points, and there is going to be a lot of rainwater. But you're right. I think in this area we're kind of at higher ground. But I think I think this was the one maybe that was interesting because it required looking at different, instead of a 1 in 100-year flood, like I forgot the different cutoffs they had. So it's kind of almost stress testing your community would be, help. Yeah, but.
Well, there's a lot of stuff related to this, and it just shows how you can't compartmentalize flooding because it means reassessing based on the new flooding models, reassessing our entire culvert system.
Yeah.
Our whole water carrying system in the village, which can blow out in one storm. And we've seen it.
Yeah.
And John does this, and he's having to resize culverts all over the place to try to carry increased capacity.
Yeah.
So those things are interrelated and they're a big expense for the village.
Yeah, that's exactly the ones coming up. Green infrastructure and culverts, dams, definitely.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I'm going to have to let myself out of the room. I'm sorry to have to leave you all.
That's
It's
fine,
been
Lynn.
real, and I'll see you at the next meeting. And I'll look forward to seeing that document, Ronnie, and I'll start looking at it.
Yeah, I will send those out after
Okay.
the meeting.
Night, everybody.
Tomorrow.
Good night.
Night.
Bye, Lynn.
Bye.
The Freeboard policies.
Freeport does not seem relevant to us unless I'm reading it. It said something about basically the structure has to start 2 feet above. You had to have like 2 feet of kind of above where the water or where the shore is or something. It seemed like it was
Yeah,
more for,
I'll have to agree with that. I don't think this action is particularly relevant to Village of Lansing, so.
if we were on Long Island, I think it'd be really important, but
Yeah, and I want to stress that a lot of these actions within PE7 are actually very hard to do
mm,
and hard to do well as well. So I wouldn't be discouraged if you can't do everything. Just keep that in mind. These are all
Okay.
very comprehensive things to do.
Okay.
There is a lot of focus on this right now because we're seeing a lot of the damages that climate hazards can cause, and that
Mhm.
they're getting worse over the years.
Mhm.
So I would just definitely stick with what is most applicable to the actual village.
yeah.
And spend your resources there, because what'll help you is not doing all of these actions, but doing the ones that are best for the village.
Lowest hanging fruit. Okay, a green
Green
infrastructure.
infrastructure sounded like it'd be, I would interested what Jerry thinks of this, but it sounded like it was very useful way to think about how climate change would affect what we spend on and how to prepare for it in terms of, I think there's stormwater, sewer overflows, parking lots. There's a big long-term benefits in terms of adaptation if we think these things through, and lots of different point options, but I guess, Jerry, do you think this thing is this one of the much harder to do type of things, or?
If we're talking about creating a plan or some sort of guidance document in which the village can explore in the future, I would say this is definitely doable. But I know that specifically for a lot of green infrastructure projects, there's a lot of funding that goes into it.
Mhm.
I know, for instance, I did a project on permeable pavement when I was in school. It is very costly to do, even though it has a lot of good benefits to it.
Mhm.
But if this is something just like talking about, and I think, let me double check this action right now because I'm also on this document or this
Is
website.
is this not just the village does, but the village requires new construction? I can't remember. I'm getting all mixed up, but is this one also where you require new construction to kind of fit into these?
I believe so, which is why I was kind of on the fence about whether or not this is doable.
Okay.
So it's yeah, it talks about a feasibility study, which I think leads to committing to an actual project. Yeah.
Well, some of the thing is that we have bioretention systems now, and we're in the process of mapping their locations and their efficiency or usability with the MS4 inspections that our code enforcement officer has started. He's actually started it last year, and I think at the end of this year, perhaps next year, that information will be audited. So
Is that kind of like the Culverts Dam project Mike Scott was doing?
yes, that's
Yeah,
part
okay.
of it.
Yeah, okay.
But he's also mapping all of our retention ponds.
Yeah, right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
some of this we're doing, but I don't know if it's enough to really.
I think as I look at the points, I thought you could break it up into lots of different points, which I thought was exciting because you could get 1 point for this, 1 point for that if you go down to points.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was one that we might be able to pick a few points here and there.
Okay, I'll put it.
Yeah. So if you wanted to just do that, I would definitely say, so it says the first 2 points are for updating or creating a community-wide plan for green infrastructure. I think actually I'm trying to
Would that
remember.
maybe fit into the top 4 kind of planning ones that we talked about earlier? Any of those things you can build off of, I guess, or build into it, I suppose.
This would be a bit separate. It
Okay.
weighs into the vulnerability assessment, but it unfortunately isn't like the exact same.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right. Yeah. So they're inputs to those documents.
Right, right.
Okay.
So I was kind of thinking that in some ways, the more it can be synergistic, that'd be nice since it's other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back down. Okay, we're now at
Climate, the culverts and dams, I was hoping that Mike Scott might look at this and be like, oh yeah, we're kind of doing this, but
let's see here.
at least some of it.
Yeah, we
don't have dams,
basically, we constantly inspect all of our culverts. We don't have any dams per se, but we definitely have culverts that we inspect, basically to prevent stormwater runoff from being held back into neighborhoods and flowing, freely on its way toward Cayuga Lake.
and I think some of the points were just to map it out, if I remember correctly.
And we are using, you remember the software we were talking about at our last meeting, just ArcGIS or GPS, I can't remember, about how we can map it using an iPad. And once we're there inspecting it, if it's not already on our map, take a picture and it makes a map point. And from that, we can generate all sorts of maps of all of our culverts, all of our retention ponds, all of our water lines, water breaks, sewer lines, sewer breaks, things like that. So this would be probably within that action. If we might not be at the point where it's complete now, but I think within the year we would be.
Yeah, I kind of thought it might make sense to have Michael Scott look at this as well, because it's possible, if he just has to tweak something to do a little bit more while he's already checking these, I mean, we can kind of get that done instead of him having to do the work all over again. So yeah, whatever they require for documentation, he might be able to do it at the same time.
I'll make a note here. Okay, so riparian buffers. Let's see. Some of this information is familiar to me because through our Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization and the other one, Clown, I can't remember, Watershed Network. They work on riparian buffers as part of their effort in their organization. We don't have that many riparian buffers within the village. We probably have a few, but not as many as, say, the town of Lansing would have.
Yeah, some of those did seem like it was either like a Bolton Point or watershed organizations more than us.
Yeah.
I would definitely talk to, because you said you were going to check in with Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization.
Yes, yeah.
I would definitely just check in to see what kind of plans that they have that kind of includes the village of Lansing, because if they're already doing something and you guys are participating with them, you should be able to just submit for credit.
Okay. So we've already got that marked. And sorry about the bouncing around from window to window, but
strategic relocation. It sounded interesting, but
that is going to be probably not applicable.
Right. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay. Yep. I wasn't sure if that was unless there was something there about flooding, and it didn't sound unless we're
it's essentially just relocating entire parts of towns or villages just based on whether or not there would be very vulnerable to like flooding or such.
I don't think the next one is relevant to us either. It sounds more about ocean shoreline. Yeah,
that's not applicable as well.
Yeah, the only thing I would like to move in the village to prevent it from flooding is the mall.
The entire mall.
We could pave or tear up the parking lot and build a paradise. I don't know.
Yeah, or we would have to lift it up and put it on pontoons or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would that be a strategic relocation? I don't know. Let's see what else we got here.
I'm sure if you pay them enough, you can do anything you want.
Yeah, with enough money, you can do anything. Yeah, the National Flood. Now let's see about this one, because we've only got like one piece of property that's actually eligible for the flood insurance program, but I thought that we were part of the.
This might be the one I might have confused. This might be the one we have to look at different. 1 in 100, 1 in 50 kind of thing. I'm not. I might have confused it.
It's 1 in 100 and 1 in 500.
Okay.
Measurements, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was what FEMA was doing for us with their recent presentation, was going through the various historical flood levels. So I don't know
Yes.
if we might already have some documentation as part of that, or if we have to have something specific within our village documentation that identifies this.
So the NFIP, we'll just call it that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be separate from that, unfortunately. So what FEMA did for you guys was create a flood map, and that plays into the sort of hazard mitigation plan that you guys already have worked on.
Right.
The National Flood Insurance Program is completely separate from that. It is a program in which FEMA, the village would have to take on a lot of the work, and it's essentially just ensuring that the public is aware of certain like what their risks are.
Right.
So the actual program itself, it's called Community Rating System,
Uh-huh.
and you would have to go through FEMA to participate with this. But I don't think it's as applicable if what you're saying is that the village is not
Yeah, we were like,
very high.
I think we
amounts
were
of flood.
the only municipality with one one piece of property that was even impacted by the flood insurance program potentially. And it's just like, so it would probably be a lot of work for too much work for us. So I'm just, if it's okay, I'm going to mark that as not applicable right now too.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. The CRS program involves like doing public outreach every few months, mapping out the flood maps, and especially if it's not relevant to the village, I wouldn't pursue that.
Right. It's very small piece. The next three, I think we can get information from both the watershed and intermunicipal organization and watershed network to see if any of their information would help fill in this for us. And the last one, the water smart landscaping. Let's go back here.
That one looked good to me, potentially. I think it, where it's described, it applied to properties going forward. I guess it's a question of how the points break down and if it's putting too much of a burden on folks. But it looked like it was things that you'd want to do, and if you can do it going forward. But
I mean, one of the points is just for providing education. So if you guys do like a workshop, that just automatically gives you that point. So
it sounds good to me.
Well, yeah, that's in giving the public some options and things to think about. The thing we want to avoid
But this
long term is just, I'm thinking of Washington and Oregon State, Washington State and Oregon, you know, how their drought and dry spell made the conditions right for such large firestorms when the fire started. And quite frankly, with all of our wooded areas around here, we're subject to that too. So we want to try to minimize our water use to not just in drought conditions, but all of the time to use the water to the best efficiency rather than just use it, until it runs out.
So when I read this, Ronnie, I thought this was something that maybe the planning board could also look at, because we do certain things to incentivize certain trees and other things. Some of these things could be educational, but also we could give maybe a less of a benefit for non-native, more benefit for native, or there's certain things in here. However we want to do it, but it seems like it would be a benefit to the village to think this through anyway. And but a lot of it seems like it's something that the planning board, having attended those meetings, it falls at least getting their input at the very least.
But if there's a new development, if there's another development or redevelopment of something, just say, are you looking at these practices that you could use that would help reduce water usage? Because quite frankly, judging by what I learned from Bolton Point is that the price of water is going to do nothing but go up, basically because of the cost of chemicals to treat the water, and the new federal regulations regarding contaminants within the water, how to detect and remove them. It's
Right.
going to potentially drive the price of our municipal water supply very high. So people are going to be more and more interested in what can we do to use less water or use it more efficiently anyway. So I assigned that one to me because working with Bolton Point, I can say, you know, they may have some contacts that we can tap into also to get some information that would help us out.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting the different things you can do under that.
Yes.
Particularly the buildings going forward, I think that might be of interest.
Put this date in all of these since we discussed them all. That's the latest latest status update for these. Okay, so that's all done. Okay, that's all we need to do for tonight. And
I just have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
While I have Jerry on, I also kind of just peeked at some of the other ones, the other categories, just to kind of see. I mean, some of them were kind of like, I think innovation was kind of like, well, we gotta walk before
Yeah.
But I was looking at like I think we talked about this last time, under 9, climate related public event, host an event once a year. And did we already do this as a qualifier? I mean, it seems like something that by doing that, that would be once a year event is something that we could do that would be of helpful, especially being close to Cornell hosting one event with there's a faculty member talking about something, or lots of different ways to be able to host one event a year that would be educational. Because it seems like from my time involved in this, we're already kind of hitting that rate. I don't know, but Jerry, is there something I'm missing on that?
You probably are not missing anything. Those number 9 has a bunch of categories that are very easily achievable.
Yeah.
For instance, like local climate action website, if you just create a website, circulate it, and it's out there. Or social media, having the town create or the village create a social media account in which you've post about like energy reduction or some sort of thing like that. It's very easily done. So if there are already events happening, then you guys might already just need documentation for it. So
yeah, that's worth 3 points. And the other things in there, like when I think of a social media account for the village or a web page, it requires kind of changing the way we do things, but also I don't think I would link with village lansing on my social media account.
yeah.
No, we don't have one at this point.
No, yeah. So some of those things like would be easier if you kind of had some of that capacity or kind of are doing it. But so that one I thought would be interesting. And number 12, this could either be a nightmare or it could be actually kind of something where the rubber meets the road. Like I think it was particularly category 1 and 3. There's lots of points. I guess it looks like it possibly might require staff time. I don't know. And some of it dovetails with number 10 in terms of greenhouse gas tracking for a municipality. It's reducing, I think it's greenhouse gases and from government facilities and solid waste from government operations. If that's something we're likely to do going forward, government vehicles as well, if we move to just to kind of have it on at least on a radar to think about how we could get this, because if we go to hybrid vehicles, that's like 15 points at least, if not more. But even reducing our greenhouse gases, if we were to join, for example, if we were to use solar panels on the roof, or if we were to join participate in the community choice aggregation that might get implemented countywide, that would reduce our greenhouse gases. Would that be if we participate in that CCA and we're kind of at least on the scope, I guess that'd be scope 2, where we're buying electricity would suddenly be carbon neutral potentially. Would that be something that would work, or is it a lot more complicated than that?
I don't think it's a lot more complicated. You would definitely have to start tracking everything. So the metrics of which like greenhouse gases are tracked, you're gonna have to start doing that. I will mention that as least for the CCA, so these are specifically for the municipality. So these are government
Right.
facilities.
Not
Yeah.
residential.
Yeah.
Right. But the CCA, the way it was being described to me is that municipalities can participate in that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
facilities,
if the
yes.
municipality is participating,
Mhm.
I would have to double check on this because there might be a difference between carbon neutral and well,
Or you don't, or it doesn't even have to be neutral, it's just a reduction. And from what
yeah.
I read, it was either, as far as the tracking, I was looking, it's like, okay, there's company vehicles, we can just show we were using this much gasoline and now we're not. The company facilities maybe show that we're using less electricity or that the electricity is coming from somewhere else. Or anything that we purchase in terms of electricity, which I can't, other than our company facilities and vehicles, I can't really, I'm not sure where that would come from, but actually.
Mhm.
Unless, the accounting, I think is always a lot more complicated than it sounds, but maybe it's as simple as kind of taking our utility bills and our vehicles, the bills we pay for gasoline, just showing a reduction. That would be, I mean, that's worth almost enough to get you to, and that some of that counts as PE10, like greenhouse gas tracking.
Yeah. So I would work on
Yeah.
greenhouse
That would get you to,
gas.
silver if that works. But maybe I think it's probably more complicated than that.
Yeah, for the 45 points, you also have to think it's 40% of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 40% is a lot.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
is a
yeah.
lot.
So
That's to get 15%.
for 40, that's so for 40% is for 45 points. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and then, but if you did the tracking also, I think, I forgot how much PE10 as far as greenhouse gas tracking was worth, but if it's just taking utility bills and fuel consumption, I think that was worth like 10 points at least too. Maybe it's not enough to get you to silver, but that's like, 25 points you could get.
Yeah.
But
And so oh, I just actually found out recently because I haven't really gone too much into silver certification, but it is very, very hard for smaller municipalities to achieve silver.
Right.
Yeah.
Even the town of Dryden, who I've been working with and who have done already a lot in the past already, are still like a bit of ways from it.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I
forgot.
think it's a good thing to look forward to in the future, I think. I would just I mean
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, silver's
but
300 points. I was mistaken. Yeah. I thought it was
no,
just.
but bronze this year, I think your village will hit bronze very soon.
Yeah.
Just looking at the application right now, you guys actually are just I think honestly just like a few more actions, a couple actions away from bronze.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are in a good spot to get bronze, which will get you also points in CEC. I'm not sure what um tier of grants that'll get you closer to or and whether or not it'll
But would it make sense to kind of keep track of, I guess, to think about how we could track these things, maybe as dry runs where it doesn't really count? So that if we do, I mean, even if it weren't for points, obviously, reducing our greenhouse gases in ways that, if at least monitoring what we're using, even if we
yes.
aren't willing to pull the trigger right now, but then when we do reduce it, that's obviously good. We'll know what we're reducing. And but also, if we get points for greenhouse gas emissions for government facilities, government vehicles here, but in addition, for the CEC, those may be our points as well there. And if that, I guess here's my pitch, is that you could almost make would it help the argument of, hey, we're getting these hybrid vehicles and or here's how it makes sense in terms of economically, just in terms of gas usage being reduced, but it also brings in money for grants. Or maybe I'm stretching.
No, you're not
No,
stretching at
no.
all.
I
It
think
makes sense,
Mhm.
I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah. So and that's kind of what town of Caroline is doing right now is they have I think a $60,000 grant or something like that coming up soon. What they're doing is they're working on CEC specific actions that'll get them the points to the higher grant amount, and that'll like kind of snowball into more points, more money for them, and they'll just be able to continue doing the work that they want to do. So I think that's definitely a good idea. As for the greenhouse gas inventory, I think I have some. I'll have to double check throughout my documents, but I think there's a folder for the coordinators where we kind of have a way of, how do you track this?
Yeah.
How do you track a greenhouse gas inventory? And essentially, it is exactly what you said. It's taking utilities, checking the amount of gas that you're using or electric that you're using, and then putting it onto one document showed, you know, this is how much we're using this year for this town or this village.
And I don't know.
Also, Drew and Jerry, I'm capturing annually, I capture our gas and electricity usage in the Energy Star Portfolio Manager that I thought there is a way to it actually tracks greenhouse gas emissions by the entries in there. I'll have to go back and look to see where that's showing. Normally, it's just tracking graphically, you know, how much gas and electricity we use each month through the years. And it started I think our earliest measurements were 2019. So, but I'll have to go back and be sure. But I am tracking it, so we might be able to pull that information in for some of this.
Yeah,
there are other aspects that I'm not even using, perhaps for vehicle gasoline usage too.
yeah, and I don't know how, you know, some of these things get really in depth, like where do you purchase all your, you know, paper and, you know, all the supplies you get, and what are the emissions? That gets pretty complicated, but I think it's at a lower level. It looked like to me, looking at the scopes. I think it was definitely one, maybe two. And it does make sense. To me, it was like, okay, it's kind of a hassle to do this, but if we kind of just think about how to do it slowly, this could mean, like I said, just getting a hybrid, you're getting a hybrid and then further grant money because you can document it and also advertise it essentially too. It'd be kind of worth thinking about doing it and getting staff's input on what the best systems are and what's the minimum we need to do. But,
yes.
Yeah, it's just about establishing a system now so you guys can keep thinking about it. But
yeah,
I definitely agree that it's a good place to start.
yeah. So if you get a chance, just let us know what if you do have inputs or ideas on what's the minimum stuff we would need to report. And maybe even if you talk to Dryden or Caroline or you haven't how they actually do it to make it not too difficult, then we could run it past our staff maybe and kind of see what if we can do it or what we would need to change to do it, because that would be, yeah.
I know Jody currently tracks gasoline, number of gallons used per month, per year, et cetera. She does do that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So if we can convert that into something, the problem is that certain years your vehicles have a long winter with a lot of work and the mild winter with not so much work. So it's not apples to oranges always. See, every year is its own fruit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know how I don't know. One of the things it looked like they wanted to go back 10 years or something like that. So maybe that's how they smooth that out. I don't know, but yeah.
I don't think that's 10 years. I think the look back period is 10 years, which means that the documentation has to be within the past 10 years.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's that you track over time. I'll have to double check on that though.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Jerry. I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That explains that, because I would have interpreted that the same way Drew was interpreting it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm not even sure our records are available from 10 years ago. Knowing Jody, we probably have them from 25 years ago.
Yeah, as I said that, I was like, I don't think any municipality would actually do that. Kind of think of it. Yeah, or that'd be hard to do. Yeah, that wouldn't be meant. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
All right.
Well, that's all I had for tonight. And I've got a couple of action items that I will take up. I will send out an email about the time change. And I will send you, Drew, I'll send you and Lynn links to those documents. You might already know where to find them. So
yeah, I think
I'll still send it to you just in case.
Okay.
All right.
All right, great. All right. Thank you very much, Jerry and Ronnie. I appreciate it. Really
thanks. This was a really productive meeting. So
yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to do. Like you assemble your wish list. It's almost like Christmas. Like here's my
yeah, dear Santa, I want to lower my greenhouse gas emissions this year. Show us how.
We're gonna do this and this and this and this. Yeah.
No coal, please, Santa.
Absolutely no coal.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you both. I'll see you soon.
Sounds good.
Have a good night.
Good night.